Greetings, my fellow gamers. It's Game Goblin here to dispense more game mastery advice. The 7 Deadly GM Sins. Yay! Today's episode is about envy. Envy. Ooh. Now this is a big one here. And I've spoken of this one in previous episodes on our podcast, especially with one GM in the past during a Rifts game. And an envious GM, again, is one of those more quiet sins. You're not going to catch it right off the bat, but once you do, watch out. And envy, by definition, is the desire for others' traits, status, abilities, or situation. And an envious GM, of course, one of the first precursors to this is they wish that the game was easier. So, why did they pick a hard game to play instead of twerps, where you just roll 1d6 and that's your stat? I don't know. However, an envious GM will do similar things to a gluttonous GM in the regards of character sheets. They will clone characters, in fact. Just as the example I gave in that Ritz game where we had a bunch of characters, they were all unique, really good characters, well-defined, they had excellent personalities. Everybody was definitely bringing their A game on point for that game session, especially two of the players really stood out from the rest of the crowd. And the next thing we see is the GM is introducing NPCs that are carbon copy knockoffs. And that's a sign of envy, is when the GM starts taking things away from the characters and making them, and taking ownership of those things, really. An envious GM, of course, will look at the players. They have it so simple. They have one sheet to worry about, 2, 3, maybe 4 books that their character is built out of with only a handful of pages out of each. That player really needs to pay attention to. The GM has all sorts of things to pay attention to. Even if it's just, core rule books and splat books, they still have a lot on their menu and plate. There's a ton of rules, and an envious GM will look at that situation and be like, man, I wish my gaming was easier, as easy as the players. And that's kind of one of the precursors there is they like how easy the players have it at the game table. The player has one character to worry about. They don't have to worry about all of the NPCs, kings, queens, economics, magical monsters, different planes of existence. The players, in comparison, really do have it easy. An envious GM also could be the uncreative type. Maybe they're the only thing they can do really is modules or base their games from movies and books that they've read. And if they read a movie, congratulations, they are way more creative than I am. That's just a post thought there. Anyway, in the vein that they're uncreative, the GM may look at one or two of the players who are really spot on creative. They come up with interesting characters or really unique storylines to their character for the background. And an envious GM will try to clone and duplicate and take ownership of this. Because perhaps they can't do it, or they're unwilling to do it. Perhaps they're too lazy to do it. It's kind of one of those weird things to try to nail down and define. The last 3 sins in this series have actually been kind of difficult, but envy is a little easier than the rest because a GM who really desires what the players have will take strides to do such things. Sometimes I've seen this as they will actually attack players, or attack their characters, I should say, for being better than the GM's NPCs. The GM could come up with this really phenomenal NPC who's the exposition machine. They're there to help the players along the road through the game and, give them bits of information here and there. And the GM really likes this NPC. And then comes a player who's just, they're not better than that NPC, but there's something about that character that the GM just latches on to that's better than what they've done. And then they'll start making life hard and start delving into the other GM gaming sins. So if you've seen an envious GM, I'd really like to know, because I've only encountered like 2 or 3 in the last 20 years, and it was small stuff, really. GM that I mentioned earlier in the Rifts game, he did kill the game by doing what he did. The carbon copy clones of our characters really did kill the game. Maybe you've seen other examples, and I would really like your comments down below. And if you've seen a GM who's done something that relates to envy, go ahead and give me your story. I'd like it. There's always more examples out there. I'm just going off of what I've seen. Again, another short episode, but the last episode is going to be the big one. the granddaddy of them all, and probably the one sin every GM at some point commits repeatedly. So, I'll see you then. Toodles.
Kiss the beat.